Welcome to the MacIver Report, the official staff podcast for the John K. MacIver Institute for Public Policy, headquartered in Madison, Wisconsin. The MacIver Report is our chance to take on pressing and provocative issues in an informal setting so we can really explore them thoroughly and creatively. Now, this is our first foray into video podcasting, and we're going to be talking about our upcoming fall general election. So let's start by introducing everyone. First of all, I'm Bill Osmolsky, content director for the MacIver Institute, but my background is in TV news, and I have been with MacIver for 15 years, and I am joined by Annette Olson and Michael Lucas. Mike, why don't we start with you?
Hi, Mike. I'm the lead policy analyst. I focus on economics and education. Prior to joining MacIver in January, I was a teacher for 3 years at a charter school.
In California?
No, in Florida.
Oh.
But I am from California originally. I got out of there quite a long time ago. So happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. And Annette?
I'm Annette Olson. I'm the CEO of MacIver Institute. Happy to be here with both of you. I too escaped blue state, Minnesota, but I know how to vote in Wisconsin, so I think that's great news.
Well, you know, I grew up in Indiana and I went to high school in Ohio, so two deep red states. So I'll try to, been trying to bring that influence here, I guess, my entire adult life.
Yeah.
But okay, so we got to start off with our predictions. Mike and I have been making predictions. This is our third MacIver Report podcast. Mm-hmm. I've got the list up here. I know there's more that I'm missing, but first one that I had was the October surprise will be Jimmy Carter passing away. Now, there's still a couple weeks left in October.
He's actually voting.
He's voting. I mean, I think that's, if the shoe were on the other foot, it'd be a scandal. You look at that guy. I want to see his hand with the pen, filling out that arrow to Kamala. I'm a little skeptical of his ability to vote.
The left has no empathy for their folks.
And if he does die before the election, there'll be another controversy because they're going to have to pull his vote out. And that will be a firestorm and might give him an opportunity to get some more, publicity about Republicans trying to steal your vote.
Yep.
Joe Biden will resign or die in office right after the election. Well,
I've seen some photos recently. It seems like the latter has already occurred. He's sprawled out on a chair on the beach. Oh, and, mouth, hanging open like this.
Yeah, but he's been interrupting a lot of press conferences and stepping on Kamala's feet. So,
right.
But I'm adamant, with my belief that it would be a strategic disaster for the Democrats to have Joe Biden step down before the election because Kamala would then become president. And then they would have maybe just a fraction percentage of voters who would say, oh, Kamala won, must have won. I don't need a vote now. So they cannot risk that, so they'll wait till after the election before they swear her in as 47. And again, she will be 47. It will either be for 2 months or for 4 years and 2 months, but they're gonna swear her in after the election.
Better than Jill Biden being president.
Yeah.
Oh, she's acting.
Yeah, that's right. At least we'll know who the person is. All right, so that was the third one. Was Kamala will be president by the end of the year, whether she wins or not. The U.S. will not be dragged into a war before the election. What do you think about that one so far?
I think we're still good on that front. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm still, this is like probably the most dangerous prediction that we're making because when we first made this prediction, it was like a Monday that we did this podcast, and everyone was saying Iran is going to nuke Israel.
Right. Yeah, they'd announced they were going to attack.
Yeah, and we shrugged our shoulders. It's not going to happen, and it was very risky because the podcast wasn't even going out for a couple of days, but didn't happen. So we got a good track record with that one, and we're sticking with no World War III before the election.
But Israel's been pretty good about cell phones and pagers blowing up and
things like that. They're very creative and resourceful. Yeah.
I was listening to a comedian. He said, Israel has given new meaning to the term buzzkill. Huh?
Yeah, that's a good. We had another foreign policy one. and it was going to be an armistice will be declared in Ukraine to give Kamala a foreign policy victory before the election. This one seemed like a gimme, like because an armistice doesn't mean a treaty or anything like that. It's just a ceasefire. But most people don't know the difference, so it would give her a really easy win. You know, which she could come on and say, "Okay, fighting part's done. Now we're going to solve this one at the negotiating table." But
yeah, I think Putin's going to resist that at every opportunity. I think he's going to keep it going just out of spite because he obviously blames Biden.
yeah,
Yes, and it is Biden's fault.
and they keep cranking it up too. I mean, now you've got.
So why give him the win?
Yeah,
Right? I think Putin much prefers to deal with Trump.
It seems like it's getting bigger even. I mean, now supposedly North Korean troops are headed to the Ukraine to fight for Russia. So,
Yeah.
and then we had there would be a scandal with behind the closed bedroom type stuff, with some of the candidates. And I mean, there's
with Kamala. My prediction was a little off, but I was 50% right. I thought it was going to be revealed that Kamala was doing something nefarious behind closed doors. Lo and behold, her husband has been doing that. Well, it was a couple of weeks ago. It was reported that
beating girlfriends and things like
slapping her
that.
so hard she spins around and inducing a miscarriage in one of his mistresses.
Yeah.
So,
All right. So those are our predictions so far. Jury's still out on most of them. So why don't we switch gears? Well, we're talking about the election, so that's just segue now into talking about where are we at right now with the election. And Annette, you are probably the most involved with the election stuff out of the three of us. So why don't you give us a little where you think things are at?
I think we're entering in a very good space. I never thought I would say that at 20 days out from the election coming up, but I think ultimately we've raised awareness throughout the year that people are engaged, they're moving, they're motivated, and we've got some groups out there that are really trying to get the vote out. People with low confidence, no confidence in election integrity. We've got some groups that have been working in that world.
So I mean, we're going to talk about a few different segments of the population, but in terms of voter election integrity, I mean, we've been hearing for 4 years tons of people saying I'm never voting again until they fix 2020,
right?
Which pretty much ensures they would never fix.
We're not backing up.
Yeah.
We can't take 4 more years.
Yeah, so I mean, how are we reaching those people? Have a lot of them come around, or?
So we're hoping that they are. So we've identified in Wisconsin about 770,000 voters that low propensity, leaning conservative, and they just really distrust the whole election process, what's been happening. And so there's a couple of groups, election integrity network type groups that have been working in the state, focusing on that universe and trying to get their folks out to vote. So for instance, you've got the hunters, sportsmen. There's a certain percentage of that 770,000. So about 40% of hunters in Wisconsin aren't registered.
770,000. That's
a big number.
That's just in Wisconsin.
That's just Wisconsin. And then there's about 100 and some thousand in the farming and agricultural community as well. There's a group working on trying to turn out those folks. We are trying to focus on the rest of them and trying to talk to them about getting confidence in voting, making sure that they know that there's been enough work with our legislature to try to firm up and keep WEC accountable. That's really the main thing, is that WEC knows that they are being watched.
So wait, why do they say they don't vote?
They don't have confidence in our election outcomes.
So then we got 770,000 hunters. It was 100,000 farmers.
So it's about 100,000 farmers or in the ag community, and there's about 300,000 hunters.
Then I also saw we got like 60,000 Catholics don't vote, and
there you go.
I mean,
the evangelists don't want to vote either. I mean, we have a problem, and we've known that, and I'm very happy that there's been groups out there working, trying to turn them out.
Yeah, I know. Like with the Catholic vote, a group of men were spent Sunday night filling out writing letters to Catholics
Good.
on why you got to vote. So,
Oh, good.
I mean, I know there's a lot of grassroots activism and stuff that I know a lot of people just, the people that can't keep track of this aren't even. It's not even on their radars. So.
No, and you brought up an interesting point, Bill, because a lot of this is all done at the grassroots level, grass tops. The opposition that we're facing, we're up against tons of money. We don't know even where the money comes from. Hollywood, so-called dark groups, but we've really got the grassroots moving.
Yeah, in terms of, the left is always yelling about dark money. I don't think, having spent a lot of time on the Wisconsin Ethics Commission's database, it's really interesting how much out-of-state money comes into Wisconsin to support leftist candidates, and you really don't see that on the right so much.
No, that's true.
I'd like to just talk a little bit about, I've been talking to you guys about what I call strategic voting. And I ran through this with Mike this morning, so I'm just going to kind of lay out my theory here, or my strategic idea for how people vote. And it comes down to, as an individual voter, you've got a wish list, and there's four tiers on this wish list for when you vote for a candidate. At the top, number one, you want a candidate who agrees with you on everything and is going to give you exactly what you want. And the second tier is, I want to elect a candidate who's just going to give, I don't care what they think, I just want them to give me everything I want. Third tier is, you want a candidate who's going to advance my cause. Whatever my special interest is as an individual, I want them to advance that for me. And the fourth I will settle on is a candidate who will simply just provide me with an environment where I can do my thing, I can, advocate for myself. Now, when you're in a primary election, you've got to balance those two factors. You want to pick the candidate that's highest up on your wish list, but who can also win the general election. And so, then in the general, you want to pick the Republican or the Democrat who is highest on your wish list. And if you vote for a third-party candidate who's highest on your wish list, well, you're going to end up with a Republican or Democrat who is lowest on your wish list. And if you don't vote at all, you're going to end up with the Republican or Democrat who's lowest on your wish list. So I got two examples here. One is the pro-lifer argument, the adamant pro-lifer, and I'm one of them. 95% of the country, or only 5% of Wisconsinites, according to the Marquette Law School poll, are completely opposed to abortion. I'm in that 5%. So what are this isn't my wish list, but a stereotypical pro-lifer might say, well, I want a president who will 100% opposes abortion and they abolish it with an executive order on day one. Your second tier would be a president, maybe they aren't 100% pro-life, but they're still going to abolish it on day one. Third, you want a president who's going to sign every pro-life bill that comes across his desk. And fourth, you at least want a president who's going to protect your right to talk to others about being pro-life. So how would we score the candidates on these? Well, I would say that President Trump, he is third tier. He is going to advance your cause. Every pro-life bill that comes across his desk, he's most likely going to sign. Harris, she's not even on your list. So you will probably end up going to jail just for praying in front of an abortion clinic if she's president. And we know that this is what leftists do. We've got the 75-year-old woman who was arrested in D.C. a few years ago for praying in front of an abortion clinic. We got that dad who was arrested in Philadelphia 2 years ago because some protester started pushing his son around and he pushed back and FBI's at his house and now he's in jail. Okay. So, that's what you're facing. That's how these two candidates are scoring. That's what strategic voting is. You aren't going to get I don't know if there's a third-party candidate out there who's saying, I'm going to abolish abortion on day one. That you vote for that person, you're helping Harris. You're helping the person that's going to throw you in jail for praying. Mm-hmm. Hunters, their wish list is interesting because I would say that they aren't really asking for anything. Their first-tier candidate doesn't do anything. Their second-tier candidate doesn't do anything. Their third-tier candidate doesn't really do anything. All they want is don't take away my hunting rifle and my access to hunting land. And we already know how these two candidates are on this. We know that Trump expanded access to hunting land, and we know that the Biden-Harris administration restricted it. So, That's also a pretty easy choice, and again, we get back to strategic voting. So I'd love to get, your guys' kind of take on my theory of how to vote strategically.
I agree. Yeah. So when I was
Great
doing,
conversation, great dialogue there.
when I was doing
We're done.
the ranked choice voting stuff, I was comparing traditional voting systems, so plurality voting, which we have now, whoever gets most votes wins, as opposed to ranked choice, where you're incentivized to choose the candidate that most aligns with you. And the main issue with a ranked choice voting scheme is that when you tell people that you can vote your conscience and you don't have to take into consideration who actually has, a significant level of popularity to actually win these later stages of the ranked choice vote, the result is that you end up with the spoiler effect, like you do in plurality voting now, right? Third parties, will steal votes from the Democrat Party. Libertarian Party steals from the Democrat Party. Green Party steals from the Democrat Party. Every third party steals from the Democrat Party, with the exception of like the Constitution Party. But with ranked choice voting, the spoiler effect is huge. It's way, way worse than what you get in a plurality voting system. So you end up with less representative outcomes because more extreme candidates, right? People are voting for their most preferred candidate who's more extreme. And the way that the tabulation works in these ranked choice voting schemes is that it ends up giving those people an advantage. And it actually makes the least representative person, puts them at a disadvantage. It makes it almost impossible for them to win, which is exactly what happened in Alaska when they were voting for their senator back in whatever year it was.
Seems a lot more chaotic and a lot harder to apply any strategy in how you vote because it is so complicated and chaotic and nobody knows what they're doing and people are going to be screwing up. And what do? I mean, you got to vote for multiple candidates. So
but the point here is that you need to be thinking strategically when it comes to who you're voting for. So voting your conscience, partially. Don't vote 100% conscience, or else you're going to end up with a result that you absolutely despise.
Well, and I mean, we aren't voting for a dictator. For as much as the left says, Donald Trump's going to be a dictator, we are a representative democracy. Yeah. So you don't want. First of all, a candidate can't get elected catering to just 5% of the population. And you wouldn't want somebody to go and just, lay down the hammer and just, this is what I want. I don't care what 95% of the country wants, because, heck, that's what we got with Joe Biden on day one.
Right.
Yeah, or Obama, I have a pen and a phone.
Yeah.
But yes, even assuming that Trump was a dictator, he was a pretty good one, given that he actually stepped out of office.
Or a bad one.
Or a really bad one, I guess it depends on your point of view.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that?
Well, I really firmly believe that if you value life, you have to vote for the candidate who is closest to your value there. So whether you're Catholic or evangelistic or whatever, you have to get the closest to your values as possible, and that's who you're going to have to vote for. Because as you said earlier, we have a representative government. So somebody that's going to be 100% with me is not going to be 100% with you or with you, Mike, because we're all a little different because of our backgrounds, right? But if we truly take a look at our values and get to the candidate who is closest to our aligned values, then I think ultimately we'll be fine in our country to get to that representative democracy.
And I mean, on the issue of abortion, I mean, it's easy to kind of just make it a political issue, but it's a cultural issue.
Absolutely it is.
So if you're a pro-lifer, there is no political solution for you. All you need from the politicians is to protect your constitutional rights to talk about it, to exercise your religion, and that's it. It's up to the pro-life community to convince the other 95% of Americans to join them.
And the pro-life community can talk all they want about, neither one of them are with them 100%, but they really cannot choose the candidate who they know will not support life, either at at the beginning of life or at the end of life, right? So they really have to take a really hard look at that candidate and vote against that, because that is really against their core beliefs.
Yeah, it's not compromising.
No.
We aren't talking about compromising your beliefs. It's this is how you engage in the political arena.
Right.
All right. So how do you see things going right now? I mean, so strategic voting aside, we kind of, laid that out and explained, how people should be thinking about the election. How does it look like the election's going right now?
I'm optimistic. I think Trump has it in the bag still. I mean, so I keep up to date with the betting markets, so Polymarket, and there's a new one, I think it's called Kelshi, where people are actually putting money on election results. And right now, odds of Trump winning are 59.5%, and Harris's is 40.2%. And for the last couple of weeks at least, he's been ahead, 52% odds, 55% odds, and it keeps going up and up and up every time Harris makes an appearance on television.
Yeah.
Every single time she says something, his odds of winning get better.
He's surging at the right time, too.
So initially, Harris was ahead. As soon as it was announced that Harris was going to be the nominee for the Democrats, everyone's like, oh, well, the Democrats are so organized. They did something unprecedented. Like, they're an extremely capable and credible movement that are going to get what they want.
Yeah.
And then you have an assassination attempt, and he skyrockets, and then you have a second one, and he skyrockets, and then Harris opens her mouth, and he skyrockets. So I'm very optimistic that Trump's going to win. Even right now, he's leading in Wisconsin just by a small margin, 54% odds, Harris at 46%.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised, because it used to be, I was convinced that the battle lines were drawn. People had picked their side. There was like a small percentage of independents that might go either way, but they didn't pay attention to anything that happened in the campaign. So, blunders didn't mean anything anymore. But we're starting to see indications that maybe that's not the case. Maybe there's always going to be that core, that hardcore group on either side, but maybe there's a lot more Americans that are willing to hear things out than we realize.
Well, I think we saw that with a new Marquette poll that came out this morning too, right? So they've never been that close with this race, ever. So I think that's really good news. And I think that there are a lot of people out there working, trying to get people to understand the problem if they don't go out to vote, and so they're trying to turn out voters. There's a lot of people knocking on doors, talking to people at events, and so I think there's still some gettables, probably on both sides. But as you said, every time she opens her mouth, the odds are looking better for President Trump.
And it seems like it's hard to take everything you see on online at face value, because everyone's got their take on everything, but. At least, there's a strong narrative out there that the press is starting to become more critical of Kamala. And what do you think that's all about?
That's a good question. I think a lot of people said she's a diversity hire, right? Like, she does not actually have the capacity to be a competent president. And that's starting to reveal itself. They chose her based on her race and her gender, and the fact that she was a prosecutor and was in the Senate and all of these things. So on paper she looked really good, but she doesn't actually have any of the necessary qualities that would make her a good leader. So I think all of them are starting to are trying to distance themselves from her, because after 4 years of defending Biden and spending 2 of those years trying to cover up a very clear cognitive decline, any attempt to do this is just going to spin
discredit
her in
them
a
even
good way. It's
more.
going to discredit them even more. So I think it's an attempt to distance themselves. I think they recognize they blundered with Biden and they don't want to do it again with Harris.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing too is really First Amendment, right?
Yeah.
We didn't really see that 3.5 years ago. Like everywhere on social media, that was squashed. When you told the truth, you were being told you had disinformation. Now with Elon Musk and X, Twitter, there is more reviews that are not squelched, not hidden, not removed from social media. So when you see CBS or ABC put out some false edited versions of an interview, for instance, people can now be heard on Twitter to show that what happened, that they are not reporting correctly.
Yeah.
And so they're being held accountable, I guess is my point, through the First Amendment now.
I know Facebook was really powerful too 4 years ago. I question its reach anymore. It just, I go to Facebook every day. I go to Twitter every day, and it feels like the Twitter algorithm is a lot more sophisticated than Facebook. There's just a lot of just random stuff. You go to Facebook to see what your family and friends are thinking, and you're just getting. You go on the feed now, you're getting bombarded with just random
It's all
groups
ads and recommendations and
Right.
So I would like to think that its influence is waning, especially since they've been so successful at censoring things over the years.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, the millennials aren't on Facebook.
Yeah.
We were in 6th grade when it first came out.
You weren't supposed to be on it in 6th grade. Were you lying about your
It
age?
just came out. It just came out. 6th grade, we all got Facebooks, and you played Farmville. And that's what you did, and you poked each other and commented on people's walls. Yeah. And then you used it, right, throughout high school and a little bit into college, but then you had Instagram. Everyone started doing that. And then you had Snapchat. And then you had Twitter, and Twitter was huge. And now Twitter is even bigger because now it's X.
Yeah.
So everyone's on X. X and YouTube are the big ones.
I'll tell you what Facebook seems like it's really designed for. There used to be a thing called Yahoo Groups, and before that you had GeoCities. And it was just, if you had a hobby, especially if it was a really niche hobby, where you're the only one in town that does it, you go on those online groups to meet other people around the country that share your same hobby. That seems to be all Facebook really is anymore, is taking the place of those. But that's just me.
Yeah, sort of a cleaner looking Craigslist.
Yeah. And then,
Well, there's also the alternatives to the Facebooks, right? There's Rumble, there's, some other social, whatever that one is. And I think that's where people are going to, because I think it's more freedom-oriented, where people can exercise their free amendment.
yeah, you don't waste your time on
First
things that
Amendment.
are just going to bombard you with stuff you don't agree with anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can try to get the truth.
Yeah. So we've got, so moving on to our final topic, and the presidential race is not the only thing on our ballots in Wisconsin.
Correct.
We also have another constitutional amendment, and people are starting to get confused with these things. And I'll tell you, personally, what I've experienced is, I had somebody ask me about, well, hey, Bill, how do you think I should vote on this amendment to, and the amendment is only only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in elections in Wisconsin. The wording is legalese because that's how we amend our Constitution.
Yep.
But the very question that should only citizens should be allowed to vote on our election, it throws people for a loop, because it is, why would you need an amendment that says this? It's already a law. And I've told people, well, because the left, you have to spell everything out for them, because they will find every reason to not follow the law.
Right.
They will make up loopholes, they'll make up excuses. So this has gotten to a point where we need to, just tie this down so that there's no wiggle room.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what are you seeing in terms of, people's reception to those amendments, or that just one amendment this time?
Well, first of all, everybody needs to realize that on your ballot, it's going to be on the opposite side of where you're voting, right? So you're going to have to flip it over
That's
to
big.
find it.
Yeah.
And so make sure that that's happening. The other thing is there's opposition, people that are out there talking about we should be voting no on this. They are dead wrong. Currently, our Constitution reads every United States citizen age 18 or older ... We need to say only American citizens can vote. Only citizens vote. And the reason for that is because there are some local elections where they're allowing people to vote who are not American citizens. So that should not be right. If we want a true representative government, then the representation of the citizens have to be the ones that vote. And people come here to this country because they want our Bill of Rights, right? They want our way of life. So if that's the case, they should come here legally, they should become legal citizens, and then they can vote. Now, where my concern is that people are listening to the opposition, because they are also saying some crazy things like, well, if we change this, then in the future it's easier for them to say women can't vote anymore. I just saw that some paid social ad on Facebook yesterday.
We're going to take away your citizenship now next.
Terribly misguided. So it's again through misinformation, intimidation, all that sort of thing, where people are having to think of what the word only means, and they really shouldn't be. It's only citizens of the United States should vote in American elections.
It's as simple as it sounds.
Very simple. Yep.
Well, how do you think, how are things going on that, given that the left, they defeated 2 constitutional amendments, in August, so.
Right. So I think people are getting a little leery about why is there another constitutional amendment. We had one in April. We had 2 of them in August. We have this one now in November. The reason is because our current government here in Wisconsin does not value our rights. They do not think that only American citizens should vote. They think every voter's vote should count, and that is not true. That is not the way it should be. And so the people need to vote. We, the people, are the ones in charge of our government. And so this really puts it on us to get out and vote again our values. Vote only United States citizens should vote. And it's just really that simple. So I think we're being outspent. The left is out there spending tons of money targeting conservative voters, making sure that they're confused by the language. And it's truly a grassroots effort on our side. And so I'm urging everybody to get out and talk to their friends, their neighbors, their family, and making sure that we're sharing the information correctly, that only American citizens should vote in American elections.
We are, so to wrap this podcast up, we are 3 weeks away from the election.
Yeah.
How are things looking right now compared to 2020? How's the excitement? Mike, I know that you're looking at absentee voting stats. You had those up this morning. So how do you think this thing goes for the next couple of weeks? And obviously we'll have our day after podcast.
Yeah, I think Kamala is going to act out in desperation to try and get as much media attention as possible, and she's not going to get it. I read on X today that she's trying to go on Joe Rogan's podcast right after Trump said he was going on. She's on Fox News today, or was just on earlier today, I think.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
She'll be on today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But I think Trump has the momentum at this point, and I think people on the right are optimistic that he's going to win. I think independents don't trust Kamala. I do think all the RFK supporters are actually going to end up doing what RFK said and voting for Trump. Most of them, the majority of them. So I think he's got it in the bag. Compared to 2020, the margin in Wisconsin was Biden winning by 22,000 votes. So we had 770,000.
Yes.
Okay, that's like you don't even need 10% of those people to show up, and you secure the margin of victory. So I'm pretty optimistic. I think he'll win Wisconsin and Michigan for sure, and I think Pennsylvania too.
All right.
I think that's it.
Annette?
Well, I think that the number of people that are out there watching, there's a lot of poll workers and poll observers now
Yeah.
as compared to 2020. So again, I'm very happy with where we're at with the number of people that have been trained on election working and observing the polls. So I also see that in St. Croix County last weekend, I saw a sign along the highway that said Democrats for Trump. So I never saw that in 2020. So Camilla can claim about, all of these sort of Republicans that are supporting
These
her,
actors,
the ones that have left us, because they're not as conservative.
Well, Charlie
as we are.
Sykes obviously is.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really think that people have looked at the two candidates and realized that, life really was better, with cheaper gas, groceries that didn't keep shrinking and the price kept rising. People are hurting. The young people, the 20-somethings, I think are really awake, to tell you the truth. I've talked to a number of them across this whole state, and they know that the business plan that she has isn't going to help them. They know that the amount of money that she wants to give them, the $25,000 she wants to give them to buy a house, they know that's going to hurt them. So I'm very hopeful, based on those conversations I've had with the young people, that I think freedom and liberty is going to survive.
And I've just, my observations, it feels like in 2020 there was just so much more like shady activity going on, like in the run up to the election. Like there were challenges left and right. We knew about all the, the absentee ballot drives. I mean, we're talking about indefinitely confined people. Nobody's talking about that stuff. We are not seeing like these huge absentee voter drives. I mean, everything just seems to be digital right now. So I don't know. Maybe all this stuff's going to come up in an autopsy afterwards when we're looking at the black box. But I mean, it doesn't feel like they've got the ground game that they had 4 years ago, or that fanaticism.
Right.
So.
Right.
Anyway, like I said, we're 3 weeks away, so we'll see how this one plays out.
Watching.
Yeah, and our first podcast that we did, we talked about all the mistakes that we were all the things that we're seeing on the right that could if not corrected, we're going to lead to trouble at the ballot box. So hopefully we don't just have to replay that one the day after the election, because we threatened to. I remember if it turned to be a disaster. But
fortunately, it's going to be harder for people to cheat in the same way
this
next time around, because people are privy to what they did last time. So.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so we'll call that for this podcast, and thank you everyone for joining us on our inaugural video podcast of the MacIver Report. So tune in next time for our next special.
Awesome. Thanks.
Sweet.